Here we go. It's a Thursday. It is hour number 2. Appreciate you stopping by. I'm going to the Live tour Saturday. I may be out there and grab my clubs, hit some bombs out there, J-Mac. I'm excited to watch.
Isn't it cool to do sports against, like, real professional athletes? It's exciting.
Bryson DeChambeau will be out there. Yeah. I'm fired up for it. This is a fun time of the year. Tomorrow night, Shedeur Sanders is going to play. The 2 90-mile-an-hour speeding tickets and the pre-draft interviews and the legendary, draft room. I don't love that stuff. I don't think he's a terribly serious young man, and I think the position demands that. We'll find out tomorrow, though. Could he be a great backup, or is he good enough for Cleveland at the end of the year or at the trade deadline to move him for a draft pick? I think Cleveland, who has 2 first-round picks, wants to this year get as many picks as they can. If they can move Kenny Pickett here in the preseason, if they could move Shedeur Sanders into the season, if you get 6-round picks, you're just looking for 9, 10, 11, 12 picks. So if you give up 6 to move up a couple slots, that's the game. It's an inexact science. And speaking of inexact, the Chicago Bears' new coach, Caleb Williams. Let's bring in Greg Cosell for the first time in our football season, 46 years NFL film. So you spend your offseason watching, every snap of these quarterbacks, the red zone snap. That's what you do. So one of the things that always worries me about a quarterback is if they have a college problem, footwork, hero ball. Yeah. And it becomes a problem very early in the NFL. So they're either uncoachable or they don't have a coach that knows how to fix it. So my concern on Caleb is little hero ball, holds it too long. Those were knocks at USC. So when you looked at all, in hindsight, the snaps, what do you see that absolutely has to be worked on going into year 2?
Well, there's a lot to unpack with Caleb Williams. I think that if you just watch his tape from a year ago, some concerns are just his ability to sort of have a feel in the pocket. He had a tendency to step up when there was no need to step up. So what that would do is it would bring him closer to the offensive line and the pass rushers. And so he created his own pressure at times. And obviously, he's just not a guy that saw it as cleanly as you'd like, so he held the ball too long. But think about this, Colin. You watch a ton of college football as well. And this is not a test question, but let's throw this out. What do quarterbacks in college never do, most of them? They do not huddle. So now you're with Ben Johnson, okay? He's essentially a rookie now, Caleb Williams. You almost have to forget about what happened last year, because now what he's learning is he's learning very wordy play calls that have a lot of alerts. Sometimes there's 2 play calls that are built into a particular verbiage, and then there's shifts, there's motions, there's all kinds of things that he has to learn just to get from the huddle to the line of scrimmage with a reasonable amount of time on the play clock, so that when the shifts and the motions happen, he has time to see how the defense responds. This is the operational part of playing quarterback that he's never really done before, not to the level that Ben Johnson demands. So we have to start from there before we even put him on the field playing in a real game. So there's an awful lot to learn for Caleb Williams. So this is almost a rookie season all over again. As a pure talent throwing the football, he's phenomenal. But before you get to that, there's so much more that he has to learn. And I hope people understand that that's going to take time.
So Kevin O'Connell, J.J. McCarthy. Kevin runs advanced schemes. This is like McVay. Matt Stafford is a sharp guy, and that's one of the reasons that McVay was so attracted to him in Detroit. I've seen the study habits of Stafford. They're kind of legendary. So do you think the advanced schemes, because I like Minnesota's offensive personnel, do you think the advanced schemes help or hurt J.J. McCarthy? Help or hurt him?
Well, I think they're advanced, but in other ways they're theoretically simpler in the sense that what Kevin O'Connell is really good at, just like Kyle Shanahan is really good at, is they're really good at getting the primary read open and available for the quarterback, because they're really good at understanding defenses, which is critical as a play caller. You're not calling plays in a vacuum. You're calling plays based on your sense of defensive tendency and probability. And one thing Kevin O'Connell's really good at, we saw that with Sam Darnold last year, which is why Sam had such a good season. One of the reasons anyway is he's so good at getting that primary read open. And that will be critical for J.J. McCarthy this year, because my guess is J.J. McCarthy in these early stages of his development is not going to be great yet at working through progression, certainly not full field progressions. So I think that's a critical piece of how J.J. McCarthy can do this year. And all that gets tied in with your footwork and the timing of routes. There's so much that goes into that. That will be a work in progress as well.
So I watched Bo Nix twice live in college. He's cut. He's fat. He's fast.
Yeah.
When you watched all his tape, my take is we don't watch Denver as much as we watch those NFC East teams, and people just don't realize how good of an athlete he is. When you look at Bo Nix rookie tape, what are people missing about him? Because his numbers were better than Jaden in many instances.
I think what people miss, and I would say I probably missed it to some degree as well when I did his college tape, even though I liked him, is I think his arm is better than people gave it credit for. And when I say arm strength, I'm not talking about the ability to throw the ball 60 or 70 yards. I'm talking about the ability to stick throws in the middle of the field, dig balls, 18 to 22 yards in breaking routes between and over defenders. He threw the ball really, really well. Those are really arm strength throws, those kinds of throws. And I think that he throws the ball a lot better than people give him credit for. Now, I think there's clearly some things that he has to work on. I'm sure Sean Payton would tell you that. He's only going into his second year. But I think just in terms of sheer physical traits as a passer, he's a lot better than he's been given credit for. And you've probably been around him. He's a pretty big kid, Colin. He's not a small guy, and he's a very good athlete.
Yeah, very, very good athlete. I noticed when I went to the Utah-Oregon game and I sat behind the bench, and he is ripped. I mean, he's not trying to show off. He is just cut. Very little body fat. So Drake Maye came in. I think we both liked Drake Maye. We said the comp was Justin Herbert, and there's times I've watched him, and he does look a little like Herbert. The size, the number, the way he moves.
Yeah.
Is there anything you saw? Now he's got a better coach. They spent $300 million bucks around him on line play. What was your overall appraisal of him in the rearview mirror now, watching year one and his growth?
Very impressed, given, as you know, Colin, a bad situation. Maybe one of the worst 5 O-lines in the NFL, a receiving core that, I mean, I would bet a lot of people couldn't even name their receivers. So given the situation he was in, I thought he handled himself really well. You'd expect him to be up and down in that situation, and he was. But I think overall, you're dealing with a kid that's big, he's physical, he throws the ball really well, he can move. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything, and again, we're not there, so we don't know the mental capacity of how he assimilates all the information that he needs to assimilate. Obviously, it's Josh McDaniels now as the OC. We'll see how that goes. But you're dealing with a guy that has pretty higher level traits. And it might take some time, and he's learning a brand new offense. I'm not sure people realize how difficult that is. You've been around. You've seen play calls. You've seen how all that works. That's hard. It's hard to assimilate a brand new offense. He just went through a rookie year where he had to work his tail off mentally. And now all of a sudden he's starting from scratch with a whole new offense, probably brand new terminology. So that takes time. But when you talk about the physical and athletic traits, he's got them.
This off season, I know it's a slow off season for all of us in the talk show business, but there was a little bit of a week-long theory. Jalen Hurts, when GMs and coaches polled privately their thoughts on the top 10 quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts was like 9. And my take has always been, I trust Greg Cosell. And I've said this, he reminds me of a more talented Dak Prescott. I like his EQ, I like his IQ, I like his toughness, I like his leadership. I don't love him from the pocket. I never loved Dak from the pocket. I just thought he was a smart, tough, gritty leader. When you hear that Jalen Hurts, the GMs, the scouts, the coaches are like, yeah, he's 9th best. What is your takeaway on Hurts, the quarterback?
Well, I think every quarterback, for the most part, and becomes a function in many ways of their team, and Hurts is very much that kind of player. When you think about the Eagles and how they won a year ago the Super Bowl, my guess is most people, the first thing they say is not, boy, that's Jalen Hurts' team. I mean, this was a team with a running back that had a historical season. They've got the best O-line in football. They had the best defense in football. Jalen Hurts is a piece of a really good team, and they do a lot of things that are difficult to defend. And let me give you a few examples. And I've spoken to coaches this offseason about it. They are a 4-down offense, literally, once they get to, let's say, the minus 45-yard line or the 50-yard line. So now what happens is defenses, when it's 3rd and 8, have to play them totally differently because you know what? They're going to run the ball on 3rd and 8. Most teams will never consider running the ball on 3rd and 8. So now you have to think, how do I play defensively? Because they're going to run the ball, because if they get to 4th and 2, they are going to go for it. And Jalen Hurts is a critical piece of their 3rd down and 4th down offense. And one of the things he does exceptionally well, and I heard this a lot this offseason, everybody talked about A.J. Brown and how critical it is that he can win one-on-one on the outside. Because Jalen Hurts, the best thing about his throwing, Colin, is he works outside the numbers. He can throw the fade ball. He can throw the go ball. And A.J. Brown gets a ton of one-on-one because of the nature of their run game, which, of course, Jalen Hurts is a significant part of. So he's a critical piece in what he brings. But if you're comparing him to, let's say, the quarterbacks that we think of as being the elite guys that can, in a sense, be the guys that win games by themselves, he probably does not fall into that category.
So I said my prediction is when quarterbacks get old and rich, they do not want to get hit. And Aaron Rodgers last year, Eli at the end of his career, he didn't want to get hit. Brady was practicing how to get sacked. When I watched Aaron at the end of last year, it was a lot of underneath stuff. He didn't want to take hits, and I don't blame him. The Jets' O-line. Well, Pittsburgh can't solve their offensive line. We're on 6 years in a row now, Greg, and the early reports from camp are he's not throwing the ball down the field. And my take is, outside of Matt Stafford, very few old, wealthy quarterbacks are willing to take a helmet to the chin strap. He's one of one. I think the problem with Aaron in Pittsburgh is he, like the Jets, he will not trust that O-line. What do you think of that?
I wish I had time to tell you a great Jim Kelly story, but that'll be for another time. But anyway, you know, I think the key thing here is the tackle position for the Steelers, because Broderick Jones, going into his 3rd season, has not really shown that he's a quality NFL offensive tackle, and that's a concern. Look, the litmus test for offensive tackles in the NFL is, can they pass protect 101 on 3rd down? And right now the Steelers have a question about that, and if that remains a question in the regular season, your point about Rodgers is 100% right. He's not going to want to get hit. He's going to want to get rid of the football. He won't be immobile, but he certainly doesn't have the mobility that he had 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So it'll be very interesting. And then Arthur Smith, obviously, they'd like to run the ball as the foundation of their offense. That's going to be the absolute critical piece. You know, Rodgers still throws the ball as well as anybody, but I'm not sure at this point in his career, behind that O-line, you want to ask him to drop back 40 times a game.
No. You do not. So the Lions lose they lose 2 great coordinators. And I said, I've said multiple times, the Eagles go to a Super Bowl, lose their coordinators, hire the wrong guys, and then at one point lost 6 to 7 games. We pay attention to quarterbacks and head coaches, but a lot of coaches that are not great scheme coaches they're very reliant on a scheme. Like, for instance, Dan Campbell's not known. Dan Campbell, Nick Sirianni are not great scheme guys. They're culture guys. And so losing Ben Johnson, to me, is a big deal. It wouldn't be a big deal for Shanahan or Andy Reid. But I think Dan Campbell is more of a culture guy that is reliant on a great OC. When you looked at Ben Johnson last year, did we even undervalue him? How important he was. I mean, I always felt like everybody was backpedaling against them because they had so much effectiveness with trick plays, a dominant O-line. I don't think Detroit's going to be as good this year. I don't think they're going to be as clever and creative.
It'll be interesting because here's the question that we don't know the answer to, because now Jared Goff was in that system with Ben Johnson for what, 3-4 years? I'm not sure we give Jared Goff enough credit. We just spoke about how Caleb Williams has so much to learn. Goff really mastered that offense. So the question is, how much input will he have? Johnny Morton, I believe, is the new OC, and he was there. So obviously they can keep a lot of the same principles and concepts, but now you get into game play calling, which we won't know the answer to that at all. But schematically, what Ben Johnson does, to me, is so good. The spacing he has versus zone coverage, it's beautiful, really defines it exceedingly well. But, you know, you're dealing with a quarterback in Goff, and as I said, I'm not sure we give him enough credit because he doesn't in many ways fit the mold of how we see quarterbacks now in the NFL because he's not a runaround guy. But you know, Goff really handled everything in that offense. There's so many elements to that, as we discussed with Caleb Williams. So we'll see how Detroit is, but I think Goff plays a big role in this.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because I read it this week and I forget where I read it, but somebody said on the online, I thought it was smart. They said, Ben Johnson may be great and Caleb's greatly talented. What if they're stylistically a bad match? Like Kyle Shanahan does not want quarterbacks running out of his plays. He does not.
No.
And I do wonder if Ben and Caleb, it's not his guy, he didn't draft him, if stylistically it may not be a perfect fit, Greg.
No, but no coach wants the quarterback to run out of their plays. I'm telling you that as a fact, Colin. You know, obviously there's certain guys that can do that really well, and then the coaching staff goes, "Hey, great play," because they make great plays. But no coach, you know. Look, I've been at training camps. I'm sure you have. These coaches work 15 hours a day. No offensive coordinator is calling a game or any play to have the quarterback not execute it the way it's supposed to be executed. Obviously, they understand there are times that can't happen, but they don't want it not to happen because the quarterback screws it up. They want it not to happen because the defense happens to win the down. So there's no coach that wants the quarterback to just randomly break down and disrupt the play. So it's not that Caleb Johnson's a bad fit. Caleb Johnson needs to, Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams needs to learn all this. And then as a parachute, as the last thing, then the ability to make those special plays comes into play. But that can't be the first thing.
And finally, I tried to be very positive with Shedeur Sanders. I did not like what I heard about his interviews pre-draft. I did not like the kind of lack of self-awareness, legendary in his draft room. But I was like, listen, he's accurate. He moves pretty well, good pedigree. And then he got 2 speeding tickets. And I'm like, okay, you're not serious. You're not a serious. I need a grown-up for this position. And so I don't have high hopes. And I said this for years. I think quarterback, it's almost unfair, but we need you to have the maturity of your dad at 23. That's why the Mannings all work. They're all like, you know, they're very mature people. So I don't have particularly high hopes because I've seen a lack of self-awareness and judgment for Shedeur. Is there anything on tape you love or don't love as he plays tomorrow in the exhibition game?
Well, I think what his tape showed, and look, he was a 5th-round pick, and he's a 5th-round pick for a reason. Now, can 5th-round quarterbacks make it? Of course they can. So I'm not going to sit here and say whether he will or won't. But I think what you saw on tape was a quarterback that's a little smaller than you'd ideally like, that throws the ball well but not incredibly well. I think he's accurate but not quite as super accurate as a lot of people make out, and that's based on film study. That's not an opinion, and I've had that conversation, by the way, with coaches. And he's essentially a pocket quarterback. He's not a statue, but if he were to be a really good NFL quarterback, Colin, it would have to be because he's a pocket quarterback. He's not a playmaker. He doesn't give you a playmaking dimension. He's not Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. He's not going to be that guy. So that's what he is. Those kinds of quarterbacks in the NFL tend to be complementary pieces. They can be really, really good. I mean, you could argue Jared Goff is that kind of quarterback. He's far more talented than Shedeur Sanders. But I mean, essentially, he's a pocket quarterback. So he needs a really good coaching staff. He needs team. He needs a lot of things around him to be successful. Maybe he will be.
Yeah, the 2 best pocket guys are Stafford and Goff, and they are great throwers of the football. They are elite.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think Goff has probably the most underrated arm in the league. Not the best, but the most underrated arm in the league, Jared Goff.
And you know that Stafford, let me tell you something. Stafford is so highly respected in the league. Everywhere I go, all people want to talk to me about is Matthew Stafford and how great he is. And I'm not sure if fans in general think about him that way, but he's so highly respected.
Greg Cosell, great seeing you. His first appearance of many. And have yourself a great Friday and a great weekend.
All right, thanks, Colin. Really appreciate it.